Sorry for being late. I should have talked as an entry keynote, and this is why the talk is not 15 minutes long, but a little bit longer, because I was asked at the entry talk to talk 30 minutes or so. So I hope the ling, 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 ling will not go after 15 minutes. So I will not talk about caring economics today. There is a meeting tomorrow somewhere about caring economics. So I'll talk today. I want to show you what is actually contemplative neuroscience, right? And where does it come from, and how did it emerge actually from a dialogue similar to that one we had the last 3-4 days. So contemplative neuroscience really emerged out of a dialogue of, let's say, empirical natural science from usually, it's stupid to say from the West because they exist all over the world, right? But like the empirical natural sciences and the contemplative tradition from the East, which is also stupid to say from the East because there are a lot of Buddhist monks and there is also Benedictine monks and all kind of, like Brother Tiso is from the Catholic background, so you know what I mean. And the origin of this Mind and Life Institute is actually, the founder is His Holiness the Dalai Lama himself and Francisco Varela, who has passed away, but he was a neuroscientist, a philosopher, a practitioner, a Buddhist, and a wonderful person. And they became friends, and the background philosophy somehow, which is guiding this whole field in which we are working across the world now, right? Contemplative science or contemplative neuroscience, is a background from Francisco Varela, where he said we have to stop either putting as priority what science calls the third person perspective, right? Like I'm measuring some objective feature. And what you are doing, right, through introspection, like consciousness, yeah, you're like meditating, and then there is an experience of consciousness, and that is called first-person perspective in this framework. And then there is something which is called second-person perspective, and that's the emergent reality which comes out of a dialogue between my brain and your brain. And I'm a brain scientist, so I'm saying my brain, your brain, but you could say my mind, your mind, and the mind, a collective mind. And I will show you how we developed meditation together, like with a partner, to actually account for the second-person perspective and not just the first-person, me meditating alone. And this were the very early gathering. You see all the male, the white hair male in suits are the Western scientists, and they really came from quantum physics, very, very bright, the best of the best, really, you can say, like Nobel Prize winning scientists coming together. You see Paul Ekman, a psychologist of emotion. You see quantum physicist Seilinger, and. Zionk is also saying, you see Richie Davidson, who is a very good friend of His Holiness and also a colleague of mine doing the same stuff. So then at some point, the Dalai Lama said, stop with living room conversation, right? We have now understood our concept, let's go out. So we had like a lot in Mind and Life, almost sometimes twice a year, huge conferences in the West, either in America, in Europe, also in Africa lately. And they were like, you see me here in a football stadium with 10,000 people. So they were not small, they were like sometimes really, really big. And that brought kind of topics like altruism in economics or consciousness or the different topics, plasticity. That was a meeting I helped co-organize in Zurich, and that was bringing altruism back into economics. And I remember at that time people said, but the Buddhists will not have anything to say to economy. But I remember His Holiness and all this Buddhist scholar being really, really saying a lot about economy and how altruism should enter economy, and I think this country knows the best, right? That happiness and care is in the heart of economy. So that was a very early meeting addressing directly this topic. Then this was the birth, actually, here, Father Tiso, of Mind and Life Europe. I got these old photos out. You see Mathieu Ricard, Brother David, and so Mind and Life Europe was born, and that was actually a very, very interesting meeting in Drepung in south of India, where the Dalai Lama had put a lot of schools, Buddhist schools, together, and this were 10,000 monks, I think, or more, to debate whether we should introduce Western science into monastic curriculum. And the verdict after 4 days of debating, and really a lot, was actually yes. So after that meeting, Western scientists from all came and wrote books, like pedagogical books, to basically teach monks into Western science. So out of these dialogues came a movement which is now called the mindfulness movement, right? So this was very much John Kabat-Zinn's early effort, that he developed secular mindfulness-based 8-week programs. And when I say secular, it was important because in the Western world, he was based in Harvard Medical School. You couldn't have, a treatment of patient when it was religious. So he started taking old meditation and making it secular. And then a lot of people followed. There were MBCT is, for example, a program in Oxford from Willem, like Tuesday was the originator. And that was an 8-week program more for like rumination, depression, more like clinical application, but very close. And you see that when the Dalai Lama in 2000 said, now we really talked enough. Now you scientists, you go out and you start doing research on our meditation practice. I want to know what works and what not. We were very astonished, a religious leader saying we should prove very ancient to be wrong or right. But you see that in the moment when these conferences happened, NIH in America put money in, and this is the exponential curve of mindfulness-related publication going up after 2000. So it was a rapid growth of science done in this field. And after the first mindfulness paper, a lot of compassion and empathy paper came out. So now I tell you about research we did in my lab. I'm also, since 25 years, I'm in this business, right? So I have a long trajectory already. And what we did, we started in 2008, we're still publishing, so it's a lifetime project. It's called the Resource Project, one of the largest mental training study. And then I will show you how we use the knowledge of this science huge study to develop science evidence-based program which now are so thin and shorter that they can go into school, into healthcare, into all kind of domains, right? Become translational. And that's the Prosocial project. So I don't have to tell you about all the mental health problems in the world, right? You are aware of it. Since pandemic and COVID, loneliness is increasing even more, stress-related decrease, and what is new is that now loneliness is not a thing of 80 plus anymore, but the youngest cohorts are the loneliest, 18 to 25. So that is new. And that is since the pandemic in the whole world, you can observe that. So we call it already a loneliness epidemic because it hits people who usually wasn't lonely and they feel lonely. This is also a reason because of social media. Now, of all your cell phones, if you do that too long, you get lonely. So, okay, we have a multiple crisis, mental health crisis exploding. So we wanted to say, okay, let's do something science evidence-based, which on a bigger scale can really help society address this mental health crisis, because it is worldwide now. It's not just a country. And I talked to some healthcare professional yesterday and also to the ex-minister of healthcare here. She said, you have the same problem here arising. So even in Bhutan, I wouldn't have thought so, but it's across the whole world. So the Resource Project was really the first project to address these questions. So we developed a 9-month program where the first 3 months was called presence module, and it's what in the West you would call classic mindfulness meditation. Shamatha. It's kind of a shamatha meditation. It's attention-based practices. And then the affect module, the red one, were all meditation practice which open the heart, no? In biology, we say they activate the affiliation care system, like this altruistic system we have. And so it's loving kindness, metta, gratitude, all kind of practices which are socio-emotional, right? Which are working on these things. And the third module, 3 months, are metacognitive practices, like observing thought, taking the perspective, cognitive, reflexive. And so we could compare. We had an app, so we could follow everyone and know exactly who is meditating how much and la la la. We were like using this research tool, and we had a lot of meditation teacher following. And at the beginning of a 3-month module, 100 people would go in retreat, silent retreat for 4 days. And then they would do every day, they would do 30 minutes of practice. Yeah, and each module had specific practices. And you see already on that model, the classic mindfulness model had like solitude meditation, but the social modules, affect and perspective, they had, in addition to the classic, meditation done alone, metta meditation, observing thought, they had these partner-based meditation. And that was the first time we did that. So people said, Tania, you are totally crazy. You will have a dropout rate of 90%, 9 months, people who are working every day 30 minutes, retreats every 3 months, and we measured them with 90 different measures, like huge multidisciplinary study. We had a dropout rate of less than 7% after a year. It was Guinness Book of Records. And that was also because of the diets, these kind of partner-based, interpersonal, because people loved them. So now you might ask, why do you do this triangulation? Why splitting affect, perspective? Where does that come from, right? It has in Buddhism you also have that, like His Holiness always say 2 wings of compassion, wisdom and compassion. But there is also in neuroscience a backbone. It fits very well with what we know from psychology and neuroscience, that we have different networks in the brain and also psychologically speaking to support empathy and compassion on the one hand, the affect, and on the other hand, a more reflective cognitive network. And I tell you a little story because I think this story also exemplifies how the working together between monastic practitioner and Western scientists like me can bring about totally new knowledge. So it's not like, we come and we just prove something which is known anyhow, right? And it's not the other way around. We really, through this dialogue, if you start working together, you develop new things. And that's really and so I was an empathy researcher, in neuroscience. So I did brain imaging. That's the big scanner, right, which allows you to image your brain. And I wanted to measure, how do I feel the pain of another person? And we call that empathy. So our definition of empathy is, if you have pain, I resonate with the pain, I feel with your pain, right? If you are in joy, I have empathic joy, right? So it's an emotional resonance. And you can see in the brain that the brain is resonating as well. So meaning, if, for example, I'm suffering a painful bee sting, yeah, we can do that in the scanner. There is a network, the pain matrix in my brain lighting up in green here. When I see my partner outside of the scanner suffering pain, the same parts of the network light up, which are processing my own pain. It's like a mirror. It's like a mirror basically knowing, this is how he feels, because it is activating the same network in the brain which processes my own pain. It's the red. So at that time, this was revolutionary in neuroscience. People thought, how can you do this? The brain doesn't even get some signal. It's someone else suffering, So they said you will measure an empty brain. But we didn't measure an empty brain. It was in fire. So it went through the whole world, and people said, now you have to train if we are hardwired for empathy, you have to do plasticity research. Plasticity research means training, cultivating, and seeing how the brain changes. And usually when you do plasticity research, you take experts. So for example, violinists who have started doing violin very early on, or pianists, And then you see whether their somatosensory cortex in the brain is getting thicker. But I was like, okay, who are the people who train empathy thousands of hours every day since years? This were you. So because I was part of the Mind and Life Institute, His Holiness was very keen in us doing research. So he sent us high-level practitioners into our labs. So this is Mingyur Rinpoche, for example, and this is Mathieu Ricard. I don't know whether you know him. He's very often here. He was a pupil of, Diego Khyentse Rinpoche, who was also here in Bhutan. And he is half French. I'm also half French, so we could talk well. And he was a biologist before he became a Buddhist monk, so he knows Western science. So I went to Holland with him, and I said, Mathieu, you go into the scanner, and now I need to observe what you're doing when you go in compassion meditation, different states, metta meditation, compassion with an object of reference without. So I thought, because I thought empathy, compassion is the same at that time. I was naive. So I expected the pain matrix, right? I expected to see the suffering in the brain. But what I saw with Mathieu was a network which we know is actually with positive feeling of warmth, of love, reward. I was like, Mathieu, what are you doing? You are not suffering? Because he should imagine a video we had seen of very, very suffering children in an orphanage, very thin and horrible pictures. And I thought, is he thinking about the food he will get? Because it was before lunch, And these networks light up also if you, like I get chocolate. So then I asked him, I said, you're not really suffering with the other, no? And then he said, no, you didn't ask me to suffer. You asked me to go in compassion. That's what I did. I'm fully in. So I understood that I had not understood compassion, but that compassion had nothing to do with empathy. So I asked him, can you please, for the sake of science, go into empathy and just take the suffering of these children as if it would be your own, right? Like really go resonate. Puff, I saw the other network lighting up, the pain network. So I knew that he was normal, that he could activate this empathy for pain network. So then happened what was very interesting, where he learned something, because when I asked him, do you want to now go out and to go lunch, he said, no, please, I need to do some blocks of metta for my own peace, because I'm burning out in the scanner. It's unbearable suffering. I can't handle it. So he went back, and so we developed a model where we tested it not just with monks, but with a lot of students who have never meditated, complete naive people in Switzerland, wherever. And we really could find evidence again and again and again for these two networks. So meaning empathy is resonating with the suffering, but the risk, the danger of it is that it can move into what we call empathic distress. Yeah? If the suffering of the other becomes too much your own, you get into this distress. And perhaps in many, many countries, the burnout rates of healthcare provider is very huge, sometimes 80%. And many of the burnout cases is because of too much empathic distress. And so we are teaching now, out of these findings, how to move from a healthy empathy into compassion, to nurses, to healthcare provider, to doctors, so that they learn how to protect themselves, because you cannot burn out of too much compassion, no? You cannot burn out of too much love. So that was very important discovery, and a lot of people using this now to really build more resilience in a lot of fields where you have to do with a lot of stress and suffering. So I have shown you now just the science between empathy and compassion, but now imagine in the brain there is also attention networks, and there are mentalizing networks, perspective taking, reflective in green. And so what we did in the research project was to have modules to actually activate these networks to induce plasticity. It's a bit like in a fitness gym, no? If you want to activate these muscle here, you do this, right? And then if you want to muscle there, you do this. You can do that with the mind. And what we found is actually that it was working. So this is, such a slide needs 7 years to produce, right? It's a lot of work behind. And that shows that after 3 months of mindfulness attention meditation, networks which are important for attention get thicker. It's like the hardware, the neurons get thicker, the gray matter get thicker a little bit. It's not that you brain goes out of the head, but it's getting thicker. In the same brain, after 3 months of compassion-based, metta, loving kindness, gratitude, you have the empathy and compassion areas getting thicker. And after 3 months of reflective meditation, you have the other area get thicker. So it really means that you can train your brain, right? You can change it. And this will have a direct response to behavior. So the thicker your insula gets, the more compassion you will show. The thicker this other network gets, the more you get like perspective taking and so on. Okay, so that was great news, right? It's like, oh, we can be, I think you don't have to believe in brain changes, but I can tell you, for many, 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 many people in the West, these findings open the door so that they start practicing. Because then they start, okay, if that changes the brain, I can do that too. And then they start sitting. So that is what, just shortly, this is this dyadic practice, right, which might also be new for you, I don't know. It's a meditation done together. So if you are in a retreat, you sit front in front, eye to eye. I have learned that in a Satori process. It's a very intensive retreat which comes from Zen tradition. But you can also do it every day on the telephone, 12 minutes practice. And so it's very easy. You can imagine if I would if I would be paired with Father Tiso, and I don't know him, right? We don't know each other. We are just part of the program. So then I'm like, hey, hello. We do that every day, right, on the telephone. So I'm like, tell me a situation where you felt stress or difficult emotion and how it felt in body. And then bong, and then you start. I was a chair and it was running out of time and there was this gong, gong, gong and I felt really stressed and my hands start sweating and I was like, how should I do that? And I felt like hot and like sumo practice, hot, hot, hot. So you say that. Now after 2.5 minutes, gong. Thank you, thank you. Now tell me a situation where you felt gratitude, right? How did gratitude feel in your body? You have 2.5 minutes, gong. Okay, and then we change roles. Then Father Tiso starts asking same question and I have to reflect. Okay, so it's a mix of vipassana on difficult emotion every day and gratitude is really very resilient. And so what we found in this first study is that people love doing it. It was, even though every day you have to have a rendezvous, no, you have to meet a person in your booklet, but it was, and people felt much closer after a diet to the other person. And after weeks, they felt much closer already to people they didn't even know. So I would be coupled with you. I have never seen you. I have not even done a diet, but I would already feel much more connected. Meaning that something like an oh, that's the bell. I feel very stressed right now. This means 2 minutes. Okay, so just believe me, there is plenty of data. There is plenty of data outside which show that different types of meditation have very conducive effects, right? They can reduce stress, they can increase resilience, they can increase cooperation, altruism. But the important thing is it really depends which meditation you were engaging every day. It really depends which type of meditation. You will have very different outcomes after mindfulness or after compassion. Okay, so just 2 minutes. My God, that's really stressful. To cut a 30-minute presentation into 15 is majestic work. Okay, so then came the COVID pandemic. And as you know, everyone was more stressed, everyone was more lonely. So we said, let's do something about it. And reduce this huge 9-month study, which was so successful, to a 10-week, purely online program with 12 minutes meditation only, very, very short. And we did one group just classic mindfulness, and one group did partner exercise. And what we found was really astonishing. I make it quick now because we have 1 minute. It's like at least 12 paper here in this. So what we found is that if you compare classic mindfulness and diets, the diet was actually much more, doing more. So both were reducing depression, anxiety, stress, and all these things, but only the diet was able to reduce loneliness, no? And to foster social cohesion and the sense of we, and the sense of social, and to reduce social stress, right? So people said, oh my God, if you can do that online, and only 10 weeks and 12 minutes a day, but every day, you have to bring it into schools and into society, because we have these mental health epidemics, right? We don't have enough therapists. So we did that. So we started bringing these processes in schools, in healthcare. So we are now running studies with 120 German teachers in schools. We are about to run in Austria a study with 200 medical students. We have, during the COVID pandemic, run retreats, like live retreats with 2 months of diet every day afterward, and it really worked really, really well. It's really, really, and we even did it now in Lufthansa. You know, this is our German air company. So employees from the German air company Lufthansa are doing diets every day with other employees. And so they're practicing not only their mental health and their social skills, but also social cohesion, no? Like a feeling of togetherness. Okay, thank you. So if you want to know more, there are these web pages.